Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Emily. Today I'm going to be doing the try a chapter tag, but it's going to be featuring 25 books that are on my wish list on Amazon. So I think I have my Amazon wish list linked down below. It is not the one that we're going to be looking at today because I took a whole bunch off of a bunch of my wish list because I have so many for different categories. So I took a whole bunch and I put them in this try a chapter list on Amazon. And I came up with 25, and these are ones that I am more on the immediate want to buy, but still having mixed feelings on whether I want to or not. So I thought the perfect thing to do would be to try all 25 chapters, see if I like the writing, give me a taste of the plot and the feelings of the book, and just in general if it's something I feel like I'm going to want to read. And I have all kinds of genre. I believe I have fantasy, I think I have cozy fantasy, maybe mystery. I know I have, I think, a couple thrillers. I don't know if I have any horror. I think I have some romance, maybe dark romance. I can't remember. There's a whole bunch of genres on here. So it's really a mixed bag, but I'm going to switch over to my computer screen and we're going to go over the entire list. And then this video is going to take me a hot minute to film because I'm not going to do them all in one day. So I'll probably look different in a bunch of the clips after, but this is the intro. So let's get right over to my computer screen where I can show you guys all the books that are on this try a chapter list on my Amazon account. Anyway, let's just get right into it. Okay, so here we are on my try a chapter list on Amazon. I'm just going to go down through and then I will explain how I am reading the first chapter of all these books that I do not own. So, first I have Fierce Kingdom by Jen Phillips, Thorn Jack by Catherine Harbour, The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence, The Surviving Sky by Kritika H. Rao, How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin, The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Kist, Fever House by Keith Rawson, Floating Hotel by Grace Curtis, Heroine Complex by Sarah Kuhn, Dungeons and Drama by Christy Boyce, The Space Between Here and Now by Sarah Suk, Station Eternity by Mur Lafferty, The Golden Spoon by Jessa Maxwell, The Curse of Saints by Kate Dramis, Starter Villain by John Scalzi, The First Binding by R.R. Verdi, The Female by N.V. Wright, Done and Dusted by Lila Sage, You're So Dead to Me by Stephanie Holmes, The Witch Would Not by Olivia Atwater, The 22 Murders of Madison May by Max Berry, The Dragons of Deepwood Fen by Bradley P. Beaulieu, Flames of Mira by Clay Harmon, June 1st by Jennifer Hartman, and The Forever Sea by Joshua Philip Johnson. So those are all 25 of the books I'm going to be trying a first chapter of. There are tons of different genres, and I'm just really excited for all of them. So if you click on the book and go down, there is a thing here that says read sample. I will probably be doing this on my phone, but for the sake of this, if you're not familiar with Amazon, or if you are and you just didn't know about this, or whatever, I can hit read a sample and it'll take you straight to the first chapter. Now it'll usually let you have the first couple chapters that you can try, but for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to be trying the first one. So 4:55 p.m. is the first chapter. I will just keep going until I get to what looks to be the next time frame at 5:23 p.m. So I'll only be reading that first bit and giving you my feedback on it. I feel like this is a nice way of making sure you want to maybe read this book if you have Kindle Unlimited, which I don't think you can get this on Kindle Unlimited right now, but if you want to buy the book or whatever, or if like me, you look at the ratings and you usually go by the ratings, but I tend to not do that with mystery thrillers. So I'm really excited to try the first chapter of all of these. My goal is to try and do a rating system maybe between 1 and 10 and put them all in an order. I do on my... So for my April TBR, one of the prompts I got was to try a chapter. So my goal is to pick whatever one is the top one and purchase it and read it. Probably not in this video, but just for the month in general. So I'm hoping that one of these or all of these could potentially be new favorites. The one I think I'm hoping I'm going to like the most is probably The Female by M.V. Wright. This is a fantasy romance reverse harem. I am just so interested in it. And reverse harem is like really what I'm into right now. But I feel like maybe one of these could sneak up on me and become a new favorite, or maybe better than others. Who knows? But these are all 25 books that I really would like to purchase, but I've just been holding back a little bit because I'm just not 100% sure. So I feel like this is going to be the best way to figure out whether or not I should invest in these titles or not. Okay, I am back. I have read the first chapter of the first book, and that was Thornjack by Catherine Harbour. I read the prologue and the first chapter. This book has 3.6 rating on Goodreads. My thoughts going in to this book were that it was a fantasy romance retelling. That's what I gathered from the synopsis. So in the first chapter, we find out that our main character, Finn, her sister, has unalived herself. We don't know why, but her dad ends up moving her and him from San Francisco to New York. I don't know that she's like very happy about it, but it's kind of whatever. So we're watching as she's moving into this house. It's like old and run down, very different from San Francisco, very Victorian-esque, and they're surrounded by these woods. She lives in this old creaky house. She says it smells a lot like burning, so like the fireplaces. She ends up meeting one of her neighbors. His name's Christy, and just like out of nowhere, and then she's like, oh, take me and show me the woods. Like, you don't know this person, and you just want to go, Anyway, so he takes her, he tells her about this little tale about this old chapel or whatever, and she goes inside and she starts to feel weird. Then she comes out and she goes home and yada yada, and he kind of tells her, because she's going to Hollow Heart, she's going to this college, and he keeps telling her like, you're not gonna like it, you're not gonna like it, and she's like, why? And he's like, well, it's kind of cultish, and she thinks that's interesting. And then it skips and goes back and she's at home again, and she just kind of dwells a lot on the grief of losing her sister and the way that she lost her, and she doesn't understand. And that's all we pretty much got. I am giving this first chapter 2 stars. I decided I'm gonna go 1 to 5 instead of 1 to 10. It's just easier. But the prologue was really confusing. I don't even know what it was about. I'm sure that there's some kind of meaning for it, but we were following a man or male boy, I don't know, and he was going into the woods to do something. That was all we got from that. And I felt like the writing was kind of juvenile. Like, it was very descriptive in some parts, but it really just jumped around. The pacing was off. Like, we would get a couple paragraphs of her doing something, and then it just jumps right in another. Like, I don't know, the whole thing just felt off. I was intrigued by a couple of the things, but not enough that I can get past the writing and the pacing, and just, I don't know, I do like retellings of things, but if it's done right. This one just felt like, if I was younger reading this, I think I probably could have loved this, but I feel like it just jumps around way too much. Like, it just definitely felt like a book for like younger YA. Now, I don't know if it's good for younger YA or not, but the first chapter gave me those vibes. Like, the writing gave me those vibes. So I don't think I will be purchasing this book, but I am really happy I gave it a try, so now I know. And it wasn't super bad, just wasn't for me. So book number 1 complete. Okay, so I picked up the second book that I was reading the first chapter for, and that is The Female by N.V. Wright. This has a 4.0 rating on Goodreads. I read the first chapter and I gave it 5 stars. I really enjoyed this chapter. It had good writing, it was easy to understand, and it was just very interesting. So we're following Charlotte, and We find out that women in this world are very uncommon. They're not born as much anymore, and they are being auctioned off for a lot of money to people, and some have even been auctioned off to like 27 men because they all grouped together to be able to pay for this one woman. Like, scary. And when women are caught, they're taken to this place that then eventually sells them for a lot of money. And Charlotte's mom was purchased by her dad when there was still quite a few women left and they weren't being like charged a lot for, and only like one person was buying one woman, you know. So her mom got lucky there, and they had Charlotte and they're keeping her hidden. But her father has to have like these parties or be seen, or have his wife be seen, because if not, then they get suspicious. So the first chapter is following Charlotte, who is hiding in this like little underground area, and she's reading some romance books and she's listening to the party going on upstairs. And she mentions how her father said it's only humans going to be at this party tonight, so she doesn't have to worry about if she wanted to listen to her phone, she could do that with her headphones in. So we find that there's like demons, and I think orcs or ogres, I don't know, and they are also having issues with producing females. So I am really interested in this. Honestly, I just wanted to keep going with this, so that's why I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. Nothing really happened in this first chapter except that while she's watching her phone, she finds out that like 50 women were found in this like underground place, and they were taken by these seekers, and they are going to be auctioned off next month. And she knows that she needs to be extra careful, not going towards the windows for whatever reasons. If she goes outside, like, the seekers know everything that happens outside. So she's kind of stuck in this house, and she hopes that her parents live long enough to the point where she no longer can have children, because then she will be left alone and she will not be sold. So she's in her early 20s, I believe. So she almost sounded a little younger, like her voice in the writing, but I didn't have a problem with that. Like maybe like 18 sounding instead of like early 20s, but considering everything that she's gone through in her life so far, to be expected. So I am definitely going to be getting this book. It is definitely one I want to continue on. I'm so intrigued by it. I am super happy that I tried this first chapter because I definitely know I'm going to be buying it. So for the next book, I decided to go for a thriller, and that was The Golden Spoon by Jessa Maxwell. This has a 3.5 rating on Goodreads, and the prologue and the first chapter I gave 4 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed the writing. The writing was good. We're following Betsy. She's the host of this show called Bake Week, where I think it's like 6 contestants come, and for a week they battle to see who becomes the best, and they get some perks and like winnings and stuff after. And I'm not sure like what episode they're on, but the prologue is like something that's currently happening, and you find out like there's some tensions between the 2 co-hosts, and there's some stuff going on, but there's also a storm, and all like the camera people have been in town, staying in town, and they can't get back because of this storm. And so Betsy was asked to go and check out in the tent to make sure everything's okay with the camera equipment, and that, you know, water's not going to get on the equipment and stuff. So she does, and she sees something really odd on the table. It almost looks like a cake, looks like it has a slice taken out of it, and it's like dripping on the floor and stuff. Well, as she gets closer, something drips on her, and it turns out to be blood, and she looks up, and then of course we go back to however, I forget, I think it was like 24 hours earlier or something, and we jump into all 6 of the contestants, a little bit about them, and we even get like a clip of like some kind of like news article or something, and things are just not looking good for this show right now. And I feel like this would be a really good audiobook if they pulled out like all the stops for it with the show. And I definitely enjoyed the fact that it's so similar to the Great British Bake Off. I definitely love the feeling of the Great British Baking Show. I love watching that. It's just such a cozy, fun time. And I feel like this one is just definitely taking that and putting a twist on it with a murder mystery, and I'm really excited for this one. I didn't give it completely 4 stars because I feel like this would just be a really good one to listen as an audiobook with all the other things in between. So I'm very intrigued. I am curious on why it has a kind of low rating on Goodreads, but I find that with a lot of mystery thrillers, you get that because everyone has different feelings about it. But I'm definitely going to be getting this one soon because I need to know. The next one I got to was Heroine Complex by Sarah Kuhn. This has a 3.6 rating on Goodreads. I gave the first chapter a 3.75 stars. I thought the first chapter was so fun. Like, we're introduced to, I believe, the main character, Evie, and she is an assistant to the superheroine who is Avita Jupiter, I think. And she is there to record the battle that's happening. They're doing a live stream so that the fans and people can see Avita fighting these demons. And the demons that were in the first chapter are on the cover. They're cupcake demons because when they came out of this portal, it happened in a bakery and they turned into the little cupcakes to match cupcakes at this bakery. And so, like, they're literally battling these demon cupcakes. And I love that. It was so fun. The writing was great. It took me a second to get into the writing, which is fine. Obviously, I'm switching through all kinds of books today, so it's bound to happen. I was having a really good time until Avita threw her tantrum because she's so worried about her image and the way things look for people that she forgets that, okay, I just saved the world, or I just, battled this thing. And she sounds like she's gonna be very high maintenance and really annoying. So it kind of took it down for me. Now I do have the audiobooks for this on Everan, so I could potentially have a better time listening as opposed to like reading with my eyeballs. But I think I'm more interested in Evie. There's definitely more gonna be happening. And I don't know, I really like the vibes of this. Even though it's a little lower than the last 2 books, I am still very interested in it. The cupcakes on the cover, like the little demon cupcakes, like, I can't get them out of my head. They just seem like so funny. And I just need to know more about this book. And I've seen like the covers for the rest of the series, and they all just look so well done. And I just want to know more about this series, and I want to at least give the first one a try. So this one I'm counting as a success, and I will be getting it. Book number 5 was The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. This has a 4.1 rating on Goodreads, and I read the prologue and first chapter, and I gave it a 3-star rating. The writing was a little rough to get into. I understand that this is fantasy. Fantasy books tend to have different writing. I don't know how to explain it. Like the voice or the narration of it tends to be different depending on the fantasy. This one was a little rougher to get into. Not a lot happened. We're following Livera? I don't know how to pronounce her name. And she's just a kid, what I'm assuming anyway, and she seems to be pretty different from everyone in her village. They live in what they keep calling the dust, and I'm assuming like a desert setting. Not much can grow here. There's, I think, a single well that's a little bit away from their village, and the water keeps going down, and they're not sure when or if it will ever run out. And then there's mention of this like city, and it was like the dust doesn't even get through the walls, but she really wants to go, and people are like, well, the dust doesn't get in, so you're not getting in. And then off in the distance someone is coming, and that's essentially what happened. Not much really happened. The setting was interesting. I'm interested to learn more about like the dust, and then like the city and like the world building, and I'm assuming that there's going to be a library at some point, but obviously we did not get to that. But I gave this a 3-star. I still would like to check this out, but it's lower on my radar. Moving on to book number 6, I read the first chapter of Dungeons and Drama by Christy Boyce. This has a 4.2 on Goodreads, and I read the first chapter and gave it a 2.5 stars. It felt a little too juvenile for me. I felt like I could potentially like it, but I don't know, I just didn't care for the main character that much. So her name's Riley. She gets in trouble because she takes her mom's car and drives hours away with her friend to see this play, and she doesn't have a license. Her mom didn't know about it. Like, it was just this whole thing. So her mom, as punishment, makes her work at her father's like D&D game store, kind of, and it's called Swords and Board Games. It just sounds really fun, and I feel like the descriptions of like how it's like in this hole in the wall building and like all the stores around it are pretty much empty or run down, and it just like I could visualize that because I've seen towns like that. My own town has stores like that, so I could visualize that. And the way she talks about the relationship with her father, how, you know, her mom and him got divorced because he loved this game store more and yada yada. I feel like there could have been so much like growth with that, but I don't know, the writing was just juvenile. There was a lot of pop culture references, and already within just one chapter, like PSL and OOTD, like it was just getting a little annoying. So I gave this 2.5 stars because I liked it better than Thorn Jack, but it was definitely not a book for me. I can definitely see, like, if you're 14 years old or whatever, or maybe 15, that you could really enjoy this book, but for me, it's just a no. If I ever come across the audiobook, I may give it a try, but I am going to say no on this one, so this is the second one that I will not be getting. On to book number 7, I read the first chapter of Station Eternity by Mur Lafferty. This has a 3.7 on Goodreads, and for the first chapter, I am rating it a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I really enjoyed this. I almost wanted to give it 3.75, but there was just something I liked a little less than I did Heroine Complex, kind of. I don't know, the more I think about it, the more I feel like I could rate them the same. So maybe I'll rate them both 3.75. I'm not sure. Anyway, I really liked the mystery aspect, so we're following Mallory. And from the time she was in college, she had a lot of murders happen around her, and not necessarily like related to her, but in every instance, she's been like the only one who has solved them. And they just keep happening. So like, she'd get a boyfriend and his sister was killed by the neighbor, and she'd get another boyfriend who would engage, and there was a dead body not far from where he just proposed, and she would go see therapists, and then the secretary would die. It was just so like crazy to think about. Could you imagine having someone die around you and it always be your fault because it just seems to follow you, but you're never involved, obviously, because you always have an alibi, but you're the only one that can solve it? There's something about that that's like really intriguing to me, and I think I really am interested in this one. I'm definitely going to be getting it. I thought the writing was good. I thought it definitely kept me wanting to know more, but she ends up getting away from Earth and going to this sentient space station where her and one other person are the only humans on the space station. But then she finds out a shuttle of humans are going to be coming, and she's worried that it's all going to start happening again, and she doesn't know why it's happening. No one seems to know why. They either think she's paranoid or that maybe perhaps she's the one doing them. So obviously, I'm assuming some murders are going to happen, and she's going to have to figure out why, who's doing it, and why this is happening to her. So really excited. I am happy I read the first chapter of this one. I'm definitely more intrigued for it now that I have. Moving on to the 8th book of the day, I have Floating Hotel by Grace Curtis. This has a 3.9 rating on Goodreads. For the first chapter, I decided to give it a 2.75 stars. It was interesting, but it wasn't that interesting that it kept me wanting to read more. I wasn't very compelled to keep going with it. So we're following, I can't remember his name. We're following a boy. He leaves his planet that's dying, and he gets on this like floating hotel that makes its way around, and he's very intrigued by it, and he's able to get a ticket on. He does, and he just finds it so magnificent. And he talks about class a little bit, how, you know, it revolves around money, even though a lot of people say it doesn't, but it really does. And that part was kind of interesting, and like the way they were describing the hotel was okay. But overall, I just didn't care. He ends up talking to the manager, who asks if he's having a good time. And he says, is it time for me to go? He just wants it over with, because he kind of figured he'd be getting kicked off. But she's like, well, we can't send you back because we're, what'd she say, like 6 billion miles away or whatever. And she offers him a job aboard this. And then I think the title of the next chapter was 40 years later. So I'm assuming Carl, his name was Carl. I'm assuming Carl has been there for a while, and there's a lot more going on, but like the first chapter really didn't give me anything. And honestly, I picked this one up randomly and thought the cover was cool, and I thought, oh, maybe this would be a good one, but I don't think I'm interested. I don't think this one's gonna be for me. So unfortunately, this is the third one getting kicked off the list. Okay, so I have this little graph I made. I'm definitely thinking this is going to change by the end, but I just wanted to go over all the stuff from day one. So first I want to go over the things. We have instant purchase, where all the ones that I absolutely am for sure 100% going to get. Then we have wait for a sale, where all the books that I'm kind of like iffy on, but like still really wanting to get to. And then, of course, we have no thank you, books that I absolutely am no longer interested in. So obviously we have the 3 books in the no thank you. I will not be picking those up, unfortunately. Wait for a sale, I could be persuaded to pick up sooner rather than later and not wait for a sale, but otherwise these ones are going to be wanting to get after the ones in the top line, which is instant purchase, and I already have 2 there, and I'm super excited for them. So I can't wait to see what books are going to be on this next. Okay, so it's been like 3 days, and I just read another chapter. I read The 22 Murders of Madison May by Max Berry. This has a 3.8 on Goodreads. The first chapter rating, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I was pleasantly surprised. It took me a second to get into the writing. There were like just a couple things that kind of took me out that I didn't really understand. Specifically something the main character, Maddie, she said there's like, it was like BZZZT, and I don't know if it was standing for something. If it was, I didn't catch on, and I tried to go back to see. Anyway, there was just a couple instances of that, but that kind of took me out in the beginning. But then I got into it. So we're following Maddie in the first chapter, and she's showing this house to some guy, and he comes and he's looking around, and then he goes out to his car and he comes back. Well, then he's like acting weird. She's trying to like find him, but they're like circling each other, she thinks. And then her phone goes missing, and then she starts to get really scared. And then he comes, and then he kind of coaxes her into this bedroom or whatever, and he's telling her things. He's saying that I'm not from this world, and like that she is, and that every time he goes to these different worlds, he always finds her, and he's like looking for a specific version of her or something. I don't know. I was stuck on the part that like different worlds. Like, this just sounds so good, and I'm picturing 1,000 Pieces of You by Claudia Gray when it like mentions different like alternate universes, and that's essentially what's happening. But in every one, she figures out, okay, he's killing her off. So there's a big question as to why. So I definitely wanted to keep reading. I had so many questions left over of things that had gone on, and I'm just really interested in the plot. So I'm definitely going to be getting this book soon. Sounds really good, right up my alley. I need to know more. I finished another one. I got to The Forever Sea by Joshua Philip Johnson. This has a 3.7 Goodreads rating, and for the prologue and chapter 1 rating, I decided to give it a 2.75 stars. which means I will not be picking this book up. However, I will say that if by chance I came across the audiobook, I could potentially see myself giving it a chance, but I the prologue's writing was very easy to get into. We're following this storyteller, and he's getting ready to tell this story about something that happened in the past before all this other stuff happened, which we don't really know yet. And then when we got to the first chapter, we were in the story, but it wasn't in his point of view anymore. It was like we switched, and the writing just got a little harder to focus on, and like the names were really hard. So I kept having to like pull myself out of the story to like say the names in my head. And I just also found myself like I'd be reading, but then I'd start thinking about something else, and that's never a good sign, especially in the first chapter. But I did love the idea of these ships. So the story the storyteller is telling is about Kindred, and she is a hearth fire keeper or whatever they're called, and essentially there's these ships, and in the middle of them there are these fires where they burn these bones that give them magic to keep these ships above this grass sea, which is the forever sea. And she's one of the people that helps keep these fires going and sings to them and everything. And I thought that that was just so interesting, but it just, I don't know, there was just so much going on, and I know that this is probably a me thing. I definitely think other people could love it, but for me, it just wasn't what I wanted from the story, and it wasn't what I was expecting completely. The writing just kind of threw me off. So for that reason, I will be passing on this one, but like I said, if I find the audiobook for free somewhere, I will definitely give it a try. But unfortunately, this is a pass, and we are going to move right on into the next one. Okay, so let's talk about the next book that I read the first chapter for, and that is The First Binding by R.R. Verdi. This has a 3.6 on Goodreads, and the first chapter, I gave it a 4.5 stars. I am honestly really surprised by this. I wasn't expecting to love the first chapter like I did. The writing was really easy to get into, and I was honestly, I don't want to say hooked, but like I was very interested the whole time I read the first chapter. So we're following this guy. I don't think we get his name, but he is a pretty well-known storyteller, and he collects stories, and he loves telling stories, and the way that he goes about it is so interesting, and it's very descriptive, the writing is, but I feel like this first chapter just flowed so easily for me, and I definitely wanted to keep pushing on and reading more. I wanted to know what was going to happen. I wanted to know like what stories he was going to tell. I needed to know, and honestly, I don't have anything else to say other than that. Those are my feelings. They're straightforward, and I'm just really excited to actually pick up this book because I know it's like 700 pages or something, and so I've kind of been like holding back, but now that I've read the first chapter, I'm not afraid of it anymore, and I'm really excited that I loved the first chapter. So I don't know where this chapter is heading, but I am so happy to have found some books that I immediately want to pick up soon, so I'm glad to have another one on that list. Okay, so I finally made it to book number 12, which was The Haunting of Velkwood by Gwendolyn Kist. This has a 3.8 rating on Goodreads, and the first chapter I gave 5 stars. I absolutely loved this first chapter. The writing was really easy to get into, and it was very smooth. It flowed nicely. I really felt like I could keep going. Like, honestly, I didn't want to put it down. I just wanted to see what happened next. And I felt like I needed to know more, and I just could picture the things happening in my head and like what things were like potentially looking like. So the first chapter, we're following Talitha Velkwood, and her 3 friends left their neighborhood, and then the next morning their neighborhood was gone, essentially, kind of like the whole neighborhood turned into like a ghost sort of, and no one can get close to it, and no one knows what happened inside of it or if the people inside are still alive. And it's been 20 years or whatever, and only one of the 3 girls has gone in, and she came back out like really freaked out and like is pretty much holed up in her house. She doesn't talk to anyone. And now there's this guy, he comes and he says he's part of a nonprofit charity and he wants them to go in there, and he knows that those three can go in there because the one girl went in and then she came out. And so there's something with like the land, like it chooses to let them in or whatever. And I don't know, there's just a whole lot that goes with it. I'm not doing it any justice, but I absolutely loved this first chapter, and it is just like so good, and I just want to continue. So I am super happy that I got another 5-star out of this batch. I'm just so excited. I can't wait to get to this book, so hopefully I will be getting this one soon. Next, I have a book that I feel like has very recently been released, and that is The Witch Would Not by Olivia Atwater. This has a 4.2 on Goodreads, and for the first chapter, I gave it a 4-star rating. It was really easy to get into. The writing was very flowy. There was some humor in it, and I really enjoyed the main character's voice, and it just gave off this cozy feeling in the story overall. And the chapter ended on something funny, and I still had a couple questions about like what was going on, but I definitely feel like we're gonna get more answers the further on we get into the book. But as a first chapter, I did really enjoy this one, so I'm happy to give it a 4 stars, and I really want to pick this one up soon also. So the list of instant purchase is growing rapidly. We've made it to the 14th book. I read the first chapter for The Curse of Saints by Kate Dramis. Has a 3.7 rating on Goodreads. The first chapter I gave a 3.75 stars. I'm still like trying not to up it to a 4 because I have some reasons. But first, the writing was very easy to get into. It was a very interesting start. I liked the main character and her voice, so we're following, I can't remember her name. Anyway, I'm tired at this point, but we're following our main character, and she's kind of at this like tavern. She's trying to gain intel, and it seems like she's been doing this for a while, and she has some magic ability. She's able to like, I don't know how to explain it, but she's able to like push his will. Like if he wants to do something, she's able to like up it, and then he'll immediately do it for her. And so she's getting information from him, and he tells her something that her queen, I'm assuming, or someone that she works for, that what she thought was happening is actually happening, that these other people are trying to get weapons, but we're not sure for what yet. She finds the 2 guys that were trying to make the deal, and she stops them, and she's waiting for someone, but they're not there. And that's where the chapter ends. So I'm giving it a 3.75 because we obviously didn't get a lot of context for what's happening. It was a fairly shorter chapter, and it still has me really intrigued though, like so much so that I could potentially up this to like 3 point, maybe even like 9.5, so 3.95 or whatever, because it's definitely above the other ones I gave 3.75, so I guess we'll up it to like 3.95. because it's really close to being a 4, but we just didn't get a whole lot going on. But from the little we did get, I really liked it. So that's 14 books down, and I don't know how many left, but I think it's 11 books to go. Next, I read the first chapter of Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. It has a 3.9 rating on Goodreads, and the first chapter rating I gave a 3.5 stars. I loved the small town vibes. I really liked the southern voice of the character. I'm like the writing, the way she talks or whatever, and I was kind of intrigued by what happened. So in the first chapter, we're following Emmy, or Clementine, and we find out she's just moved back to her small town, and she left the apartment she was living in, left a sticky note breaking up with her boyfriend, and packing all her stuff up and driving straight to her best friend's house. And no one knows she's in town but her best friend, and her best friend ends up dragging her to this local bar, dance place. I don't know, it's not a tavern, but like a bar and dance place. Something I feel like is common down south. I could be wrong, but that's really all that happened. We didn't even get to see her go in yet. She was just got out of the truck and was reminiscing about being able to step in on the dirt and rocks and everything. And I liked the small town vibes we got so far. And I was intrigued by why she left and moved. But I feel like if you've read the synopsis, you know why. But for the sake of this, the first chapter, it didn't give me anything. So I'm interested, but not as much as some of the other books. Alright, so we're going to talk about Fever House by Keith Rawson. Has a 4.0 Goodreads rating. The first chapter, I decided to rate it 3.5 stars. WTF. That's what I wrote down. What was this first chapter? I am weirdly interested. This is a horror book, so we're following these two guys. We're in the perspective of Hutch, and then his friend or partner or whatever, Tim. They kind of go around for this guy named Peach Serrano. They're kind of like the hired hands or whatever. And they go and they kind of pressure people for money, and when they don't pay, they go and they kind of threaten them and either get the money or take them back to this warehouse where other things go on. And the first one goes smoothly, then they go to the second one, and things don't go as planned. The guy's freaking out when they finally say, like, we're gonna take you to the warehouse. He's like, I can't leave my stuff. And they're like, what are you talking about? And he shows them, and out pops this, I think it's like a bread bag with this hand in it. Just this random hand, but this hand's like emanating things. It's giving these two guys, Tim and Hutch, these feelings of like wanting to do harm. And it's so weird. And then at the end of the chapter, we get this like little transcript that's like question and answer or whatever. And we find out that someone has stolen this remnant and they need to find it. So we don't know what that's about. And I'm just weirdly intrigued. Very interesting. So I gave it a 3.5 stars. I would like to know more. It's not something that I want to pick up right away, but I definitely would like to know what's going to happen. Okay, sorry for the like really zoomed in thing. I just can't help it. But I added 4 more books to the instant purchase. I'm really excited to get to these. They all had super amazing first chapters, and they are so high up on my list to get to. Then for Wait for a Sale, I did add 3 more to this one. These are ones that I am still really interested in, but not as much as I am as that top row. And then, of course, down at the bottom, as it slowly makes its way there, we have No Thank You. I did add 1 other book to this, and I'm kind of sad about it, but I'm so excited for these ones that I know, or I'm fingers crossed hoping, are going to be new favorites. I know not all of them are going to be, but I am so very hopeful. So let's get right into day 3. Excuse my hair, I haven't taken it out of the braids that I slept in. We're just gonna get right into this. So I read Fierce Kingdom by Jen Phillips. It has a 3.5 Goodreads rating, and the first chapter rating I gave a 3.75 stars. Not a lot happens in this, but I felt really connected to the mother who is the main character. We're following her. She took her son to the zoo. The zoo's kind of like a mishmash of things, and it kind of feels like run down a little bit. And in between her and her watching her son play and thinking about things that she needs to do. As a mother, I felt like I really connected to that, because on one hand, you want to play and interact with your child, but on the other hand, as a parent, you have like 50 other million things you need to be doing, so you're kind of like part in the moment and part in your head. So I really liked that about this. There's at one point the mother tells them like we have to leave soon, and then she hears these noises and she's kind of like, her brain's like all over the place. At one point she's listening to that, but then her son gets her attention, and then she's thinking back about other things. But I feel like as a reader, we're really stuck on like, what were these noises? Were they gunshots? Were they just some kind of machinery or something? And it kind of seems like they're getting ready to set up an attraction for Halloween maybe. And then the writing was really easy to get into. The chapters are like timestamps. So at the end of the first chapter, they're just getting ready to leave the little wooded area that's like way back, kind of away from the main area of the zoo. So I'm interested to see, because in the synopsis it says they see something, I think, that they shouldn't, and that causes a plot for the whole book. So 3.75s wasn't bad. Not a whole lot happened, but I did feel like I could connect to the main character, who is a mother. I am a mother of 2, so very connected feeling there. So I am going to be giving this book a try, but I'll probably wait till it goes down a little in price. The next book I read a first chapter for was Flames of Mira by Clay Harmon. This has a 3.9 Goodreads rating. The first chapter rating, I gave it a 3-star. I was vaguely interested in the first chapter. We're following Egg, and essentially he is like following the commands of this person who is in charge, and they are taking this guy, I can't remember his name, Bolivar or something, because he has been accused of like conspiring against the people in charge, and Egg and this other guy are kind of like trying to make an example of him because that's what this guy in charge wants them to do. So they kind of forego this trial, and we find out that Egg is going to be the one that actually decides whether this guy deserves to live or die. And unfortunately, it's rigged because he has been bound with this flesh magic. And so he has to do what the guy in charge wants, so he knows that this guy's going to die, because if he doesn't, then this flesh magic will, I think, like, kill him or whatever. So he kills the guy, and that's it for the first chapter. So I am vaguely interested in, like, what's going on. I feel like this book has the possibility to be, like, a really good fantasy. And I really want to know more about the flesh magic. I don't know why that's so hard to say right now. So I am vaguely interested in this one, but it is sitting at a lower 3-star. It's probably one that I would want the audiobook for. But there have been many others so far in this Try a Chapter vlog that I would rather read over this one. Okay, so I just picked up my kids from school, but in the car I read The Surviving Sky by Kritika H. Rao. I read the first chapter. It has a 3.6 Goodreads rating, and the first chapter I gave it a 3 stars. I'm not gonna lie, a lot of this went over my head. I kind of picked up a few things, like there's these architects and they can kind of like move the plant life that I feel like has overgrown on Earth, and now they live up in these little island things that were built or whatever. And the main character, I don't know how to say her name, unfortunately, but she's trying to figure out what happened to Earth and why these things are happening. And she's married to one of the highest architects who's also on the council, which I believe is like the highest thing you can be. And they've kind of had like difference of opinions on things, and she hasn't seen him for a while. And now he wants her to come back while one of these ship things lands. And, you know, I don't know. There's just a lot of tension going on there. I loved the descriptions of things because I was trying to, like, visually see them. And I really didn't understand everything, but I kind of got the gist of what was happening. I'm interested in the relationship, but honestly, I was just left confused by this first chapter. I really don't know what's going on. Granted, it is the first chapter. This is a sci-fi. I don't read a lot of sci-fi, but I feel like I'm still interested enough to want to know what happens, and the cover is stunning. But honestly, I have other books, like I said, that I would want to read over this one, and this one's kind of lower on the totem pole, so that's a little disappointing. But I was happy to at least give it a try, and I know a little bit more of what it would be like going into this book. Okay, so I have read another first chapter, and that was for June 1st by Jennifer Hartman. This has a 4.3 Goodreads rating, and the first chapter rating I gave a 4.5 stars. I thought this was a really interesting way to start a story, but I also thought it was a very sad way to start a story. I'm so sorry if you hear the dog barking. Seems like everyone wants to be doing something right now, but I want to get this out before it goes away from my mind. Anyway, so we're following Brant. He's 6 years old. At the beginning, he's talking with his friend Theo, and they're talking about how Theo's mom's having another baby, and they're kind of just like playing around saying like, if it's a girl or a boy, what would they name it? And then saying like they could be Mario and Luigi, and the baby could be Peach if it's a girl, and they would protect it and everything. And Brant loves this idea. He doesn't have any siblings, and his parents kind of seem like they don't have the best relationship either. And you kind of get that feeling, like, obviously, the further on you go into this chapter. And then Theo has to leave because his mom's having a baby. And then before he goes into his house, he makes a wish that he would do anything, give anything to have a sibling or a sister, I think. And so he goes in, and his mom tells him, maybe one day you and I can just go and start a new life. And he's kind of like, well, what about Dad? And then she kind of makes the comment of, tomorrow's June 1st, and June always feels like a new beginning. And then he goes to bed that night, and it takes him a while to fall asleep. And then when he does, he's woken up by his dad. His dad's frantic, his dad's upset, and he's confused. And then he's upset, and he's like, where's Mom? Like, Mom said she was going to protect me. And his dad gives him his phone. He says, call 911, hide under the bed. Don't call until the sun comes out. And then he says to cover your ears. Well, his dad leaves, and then after a little bit, he hears this loud bang, and obviously you can guess what happened. And then after what feels like hours to him, he calls 911. He doesn't say anything because his dad didn't say to say anything. And he goes downstairs, he finds his parents, and then he's taken away by the police, and he wonders if his wish is the cause of this. So that is where we are at for the first chapter, and it was so sad, so devastating, but in a good way. Like, it kept me wanting to read. So I'm giving this a 4.5 stars, and I can't wait to dive further into this book, but I know it's gonna crush me. We're so close to the end. I have 4 books left after this one, but I read the first chapter for You're So Dead to Me by Stephanie Holmes. It has a 4.1 rating on Goodreads. The first chapter I gave it 4 stars. We're following Bree, and she's on an airplane, and she's kind of being harassed by this old woman ghost, and it kind of just goes from there. That's really all that's happened. And then she gives us some rules about Ghost. But I thought that it was very humorous. It was very easy to get into. It was very quirky. And I just love paranormal ghosts, and I love when people can see them. And I know that this is going to turn into like a cozy mystery / romance with Ghost. And I am excited for it. So I gave it a 4 stars on the first chapter, and I am super excited to continue on with this because I have read 2 other books from this author's other series, and I really enjoy it. They're quick, easy, and fun, and just great popcorn reads. So this one's definitely going to be bought, whatever, very soon. Alright, we're down to the last 3 after this one. So I read the first chapter for The Space Between Here and Now by Sarah Suk, I think. It has a 4.1 rating on Goodreads. The first chapter rating I gave was a 3.25 star. We're following Amy, and we find out she has sensory time warp syndrome, which essentially, if in her case, if she smells a familiar smell, it'll take her back to a memory where she first smelled the smell. And she doesn't always know when it's going to happen, and she doesn't know how long it's going to last, but essentially it takes her from the present, and she kind of goes back in time and does that, and when she comes back to the present, she's lost that amount of time in the present. We also find out that her and her father don't have like the best relationship. She really wants to talk to him about this, and he really doesn't want to. And we find out her mom's not in the picture anymore. She left. And this also is giving off like YA feels, which I believe it is a YA. And it also reminds me of the synopsis of Una Out of Order, sort of. But I am slightly intrigued. I feel like this is one that if I could find the audiobook somewhere, even from the library, I would be happy to consume it that way. But other than that, I feel like it's not something I necessarily want to buy for myself right now. So I'm giving it a 3.25 star, and it was definitely an interesting first chapter. So I read the first chapter for Starter Villain by John Scalzi. Has a 4.2 Goodreads rating, and the first chapter I gave a 3.25 stars. Not a lot happened. We're following Charlie. He's down on his luck. He's been divorced, his father passed away, and he recently found out from the morning news that his uncle that he hasn't talked to since he was like younger recently died. And I feel like the uncle is like the most interesting thing in this first chapter. He's very like MIA in the main character's life, but also very interesting. He owns like a bunch of parking garages, and he's a billionaire. And when the main character was getting married, he invited him to the wedding, but he was sent these berry spoons, which I have no idea what those are, and then a note that said 3 years and 6 months, and that was the exact time frame when he got divorced from his wife. So that I thought was very interesting. Like, how did he know that? The writing was really easy to get into, and that's really all I have to say about this book. Not a whole lot happened, obviously, but I feel like the more you get into it, the more that's going to go on. So I'm still really intrigued because the synopsis says the other things, and I know that that's going to come up soon. So really intrigued. Love the cover for this. And I also love that at the beginning, the author notes that they have 3 cats: Sugar, Spice, and Smudge. And I just love that. I thought that was so cute. And now I'm curious if the cover art is one of these cats. I promise I'm going to take these braids out, but it's just not happening right now. Anyway, I read the next to last first chapter, and that was for How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin. Has a 3.9 rating on Goodreads, and the prologue and first chapter I decided to give 4 stars. This we're following, well, the prologue we're following the aunt, great aunt Frances, and in 1965 at this like fair or whatever, she was given this fortune about how she was going to be murdered and like a bunch of other stuff that went with it, and she ends up like just becoming like really infatuated and like and obsessed with it. And then in the first chapter we're getting the perspective of Annie, who is her great granddaughter or something. She's great Aunt Frances to Annie. Sorry, I don't know why that took forever. But we find out that the mom is supposed to get the inheritance or whatever if and when Frances dies, but then they get a letter in the mail saying that now Annie is going to be getting it, and it all kind of stems back to the thing the fortune teller told her, and she's gonna go meet her, and it's just like this complete mystery around her and like all this other stuff, and it just sounds so interesting. The writing was very compelling. The mystery behind the fortune is interesting because we know it eventually is going to kind of come to pass. And then of course the inheritance, like, does that have anything to do with anything? And yeah, so I just love a good mystery, and this one seems like it's gonna be like a cozy mystery, so I'm really enjoying those recently. So this one gets a 4-star rating, and I am going to definitely be picking this one up. Okay, you guys, I did it. I finished the 25th book that we tried a chapter for, and it was The Dragons of Deepwood Fen by Bradley P. Beaulieu. It has a 3.7 Goodreads rating. The prologue and first chapter rating I gave a 4 stars. I thought that it had very interesting magic. It had dragons, like, yes please. And I really honestly kept wanting to read. This was the book with the longest prologue / first chapter to read, and it flew by like it was nothing, honestly. So in the prologue we're following this, I don't remember what he is, but he's measuring the magic because there's magic that comes from the sun and from the moon, and the ground, when everything like normally it will seep into, but when there's so much of it, it kind of roams around, I guess. And so he's following it, like where it's going. And this one's leading into the Deepwood Fen, which is where these dragon riders are, who feel like the main area, I can't remember what it's called, but they feel like that's their place and it was taken from them and they want it back. So to go into this forest or Deepwood Fen, whatever, is like really treacherous sometimes. But the guy measuring magic ends up getting the guy who's like leading him. He ends up getting him to take him through there. He's pretty positive that they're not going to run into any of these people, but they do. But they also come across where this one magic's going, because there's like a sinkhole, and it's like if this moon magic gathers in one place, it creates this sinkhole, and it can like sink whole places. But when they get to the magic spot, the next one, it's like a circle of stones or whatever, kind of like an Outlander, those stones or whatever. Anyway, there's like these black pillars that look recent, but they look like something from like years ago. And there's these 2 dragon riders who come down, and they essentially end up killing them because I don't think they want anyone to know about these pillars and what's happening and stuff. And then we get to the first chapter, and we're following Rylan, and he is trying to steal back something that these legionnaires took from his caravan, and in doing so, like he involves his dragon to like distract them, then he gets them, and then, you know, everything, whatever, and then that's it. But it sounds so interesting. The magic is so interesting. I'm so interested to see like more in-depth descriptions and information on this magic, and I really want to know more about the dragons. And I am just so happy that I really enjoyed this, because this was one that I've been really wanting to get into, but I wasn't sure how I was going to like it. But I'm so happy that the writing was easy to get into and that I was following the story pretty easily. So 4 stars, super excited. I'm going to come back in just a second and we're going to go over like the stats of everything. So here is the last chart with this setup. I had a couple more instant purchases, a bunch more wait for a sale, and no more no thank you books. I am super happy to have read all the first chapters of these and find out which ones I believe I'm going to enjoy more than others. I am definitely going to be doing this again. I already have a bunch more on the try a chapter list on Amazon again, and it'll be a little bit, but I really enjoyed this video. It was really fun. So let's get into some more stats. Okay, so let's go over some stats. They're not anything like too in-depth. They're just some fun things about it. So the number of 2 stars, so this could be the 2, 2.5, 2.75, all the 2 stars, there were 4. Out of all the 3 stars, there were 11. Out of all the 4 stars, there were 8. And out of all the 5 stars, there were only 2. Little surprised, but not really. Out of all the first chapters, 6 of the books also had prologues. And I did find that there were like 2 that were in the 2-star range and the other ones were in the 4-star range. I will say I don't know my sci-fi mood yet. Like I'm not really sure about what sci-fi speaks to me. I'm kind of over YA and contemporary. I've been over it for a while, but there's always that little spark of hope that one of them could be a new 5-star. I'm feeling meh for certain high fantasies. I've been wondering this for a while. A lot of times recently anyway, I don't want to have to like really sit down and like in-depth think when I'm reading. So high fantasy has not been at the top of my TBR, especially if I don't have an audiobook. For the most part, I loved most of the thriller and horror. I think that's like a general thing for me. Every once in a while, I come across some that are just not for me. But based on these first chapters, the ones that I gave like 3 to 4 stars or 5, really enjoyed the writing and everything. And that's usually what knocks things down for me, unless the plot's really bad. But not surprised by that. I think I might be in my cozy mystery era. I have just been loving anything cozy mystery, especially if there's romance in it. It shows by a lot of the books that I have like up higher on the list. And then anything with romance, like specifically adult romance or even dark romance, right up my alley. Usually love them. Now I'm going to go into the little pictures here. So I had 3 categories going throughout this whole thing, but I felt like I needed to break it down just a tiny bit more, so I added another one. So first I want to show you, these are the no thank you, not for me. These 4 books were pretty much like a no for me. Anything that was 2 stars or below, no. The next one are might borrows. So these are ones I don't necessarily feel the need to own, but if one day I could borrow them from somewhere, especially an audiobook, these are ones I would definitely be willing to give a try. They weren't sitting in the right placement on my other graphics, so this feels a lot more what I was thinking. The next one is, will most likely wait for a sale, ... because sometimes they're already low enough that I could be persuaded to get them. Especially the Curse of Saints. I know it's already like only like $8 or something, and I was very intrigued. This came really close to a 4-star, and the more I sit back on it, the more I believe this could actually be a 4-star for me. But this is one of those ones that I will most likely buy, but there are other things I would want to buy before I bought this one. The others are pretty much, will most likely wait for a sale, but I could be persuaded to buy if I'm in the right mood for it. And then finally, we have my instant purchase in next book haul. So these books are at the top of my want to buy list. I have already got the female, but I'm very picky recently, like with the books I'm hauling, and I like waiting for sales, but these ones are ones that were so intriguing that I could be swayed to buy at a higher price because they were just so intriguing to me. Now, there's a couple on here that I am most likely going to wait for a sale, but as soon as the sale happens, I'm going to snatch them. Like the Deepwood Fen, or the Dragons of Deepwood Fen is one of these that I can think of off the top of my head. But I don't know, I just really enjoyed this. So now that you've seen all the graphics, you've seen all my thoughts on these, my takeaway from this is that I definitely feel like doing this will help me keep from just like buying anything that sounds good or that I hear sounds good, because my tastes are so mood changey that I need to save some money, and I have so many books on my TBR that I just want to have the ones that I know I'm going to absolutely love. And I'm so happy that for the most part I whittled down and took a bunch off this list that have been on here and sitting here for a long time. And I think I'm going to be doing this again. You guys will have to let me know. So I've also been toying with the idea of taking all the 4 and 5-star reads and doing like maybe a 2-part vlog for them, reading them. I don't know when they would come out, but sometime soon, because there are some that I just am so excited to get to. But I really want to know if you guys want to see a vlog featuring these top books that I am super excited to get to. So I think that's everything. So this video is already an hour long. I don't want to spend any more time talking because I tend to ramble on. So like this video down below if you liked it. Comment letting me know if you would like to see me reading some of these books that I gave higher ratings for the first chapter, and subscribe if you want to. I'd greatly appreciate it. Until my next time, I will see you guys again soon. Bye!